As part of activities to conclude the National Action Plan 4.0 Ease of Doing Business in Nigeria, the Minister of Industries, Trade and Investments, Dr. Okechukwu Enelamah, visited the Nigerian Stock Exchange to perform the closing gong ceremony. He was accompanied by the Acting Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Mary Uduk, Senior Special Assistant to the President on Trade and Investment, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, and Chairman Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria, Mr. Adedotun Sulaiman. The minister gave his remarks on the possibilities of effective collaboration between the federal government and capital market players.
I think we are committing that this partnership will certainly make our markets better. We want a partnership between the government and the private sector that will be reflected on our stock exchange. We want our businesses to do well. And that's really at the heart of the role of the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, which is primarily to support you, our businesses, to prosper. Because when you prosper, Nigeria prospers. And when Nigeria prospers, we create employment for our people, and all kinds of good things follow from there. So we look at this partnership as extremely important. And therefore, what we're doing here today is not only symbolic, but it's very significant. We hope it will lead to a better cooperation and relationship between the stock market and the government, between the private sector and the government. And I'm sure that when Dr. Jumoke Oduwole speaks, she will tell you how helpful the NSE has been in the work we're doing at the Secretariat for the Council. And that work is work we'd like to see continue. One last thing I would say is that when Michael Porter, the great professor of competitive strategy, visited Nigeria, he said the people that will carry governance, meaning how you lead a country forward, is the private sector. Government needs to work with them because governments come and go. So I hope you will accept the responsibility to work with us for a better Nigeria. Thank you.
Dr. Jumoke Oduwole gave an overview of the ways in which the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council is working with the NSE on the CAM Bill 2018.
Now, the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council has been working for the last 3 years to make Nigeria a progressively easier place to do business. It's a journey, so we're not there yet, but we're thankful for the support that we received from Nigerian Stock Exchange, particularly with legislations like the new Companies and Allied Matters Act that will be signed into law by Mr. President very soon. The importance of this is that in 29 years, the legislation hasn't been overhauled, but coming together with the Stock Exchange, SEC, Corporate Affairs Commission, all sorts of stakeholders, Section of Business Law, Nigerian Bar Association, to work together. Collaboration does work. And we're now extending that further to deepen our partnership with Nigerian Stock Exchange. That's why we're here today. What we commit to on our part is to make sure that this election year is not a waste. We tell everybody work hasn't stopped, and as the Honourable Minister has already assured you, we're here to tell you that this administration is going to champion the economy, is going to support businesses, and is going to make sure that the stock exchange and the entire economy gets to where we need to be. And there's nothing like Ghana or anywhere else taking over from us. We're here to stay. Thank you.
Highlight of the event was the closing gong ceremony, which was performed by the minister. Dr. Oduwole speaks further on the role PEBEC is playing and how the CAM Bill 2018 will affect the capital market.
For the last 3 years, we've worked on regulatory challenges and we've worked on legislative interventions. We've passed so far 2 legislations with the National Assembly that have been signed into law that have had an effect on the credit, on access to credit by SMEs, credit history law, and then National Collateral Registry law, so that people can use their mobile property as collateral. So those have had a huge catalytic effect for small and medium-sized enterprises in particular. Regulatory areas, we've worked with NAFDAC to simplify the procedures. A lot of SMEs have had challenges in procedures. We worked with NICOM as well. We work with about 50 ministries, departments, and agencies to review their processes. The most current one that we've succeeded in doing in partnership with the National Assembly is the new Companies and Allied Matters Act. It's currently before Mr. President and is likely to be signed any day from now. And the effect of that is going to be a lot of things. It hasn't been overhauled in 29 years. You're going to have electronic signatures, you're going to have virtual meetings. So the cost of doing business for small and medium-sized enterprises in particular, they don't have to have physical board meetings anymore. You don't have to have things like commissioners of oath signing documents. You don't have to have for companies limited by guarantee applications, attorney general's consent. These are kind of the innovations in the new CAMA. What this would do is encourage and foster the beginning of any economy, the starting, the birthing of a lot more businesses, getting them in the formal sector, linking them with the tax authority already from inception, and you know what that does for the revenue generation, which in turn is plowed back into infrastructure. So those are the effects, the practical effects of the ease of doing business intervention.
The Industries, Trade and Investments Minister also highlighted how the federal government will collaborate with markets to improve listings, and also gives updates on the ease of doing business and African Continental Free Trade Agreement.
Nigeria needs a robust partnership between the government and the private sector in order to realize our dreams and create the robust economy that we all aspire to and we all want to see. In order to do that, that partnership, the role of the private sector cannot be overemphasized. One, as a famous professor that visited here once said, Professor Michael Porter, the private sector and businesses are the constant partners in that relationships, because governments come and go, but businesses stay. So we need to make sure that partnership will survive several administrations. The second part of your question has to do with the role of the stock market, the capital markets and the stock exchange. We clearly need to raise large amounts of capital to rebuild our infrastructure, to industrialize the country. And in order to do it, the stock exchange today, the stockbrokers and the members of the stock exchange invited us, to work with them to raise the capital we need. And we said our message will certainly take it back to the administration. And I believe that in due course, we'll do more with the stock exchange and the stock markets.
So why has Nigeria not signed the African Trade Agreements and then take participation at the very onset of that treaty?
Well, the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement is an important agreement. It's a landmark agreement, and it's an agreement that will be relevant for the next 100 years, not the next 1 year. So the thing to be aware of is that Nigeria played a critical and important role in negotiating the agreement. Having negotiated it, at the point of signing, we made the strategic decision, and I think it's the right decision, to now come and do a stakeholder engagement to understand the agreement, followed by an impact study to understand what the impact of the agreement will be under different scenarios before the president actually appends his signature to it. So the stage we're at now is that all that work that has been done is being pulled together for the president, who will then digest it and then pick a time to sign the agreement. Let me say that what's important in an agreement like that is doing it well, including implementing it well. You may say there is some benefit in being an early signatory to it, but that benefit pales in significance to being an effective implementer, or one that can use the agreement to achieve important goals for Nigeria and for Africa in terms of economic integration, in terms of how we deal with some of the issues we've learned from our work at the ECOWAS level. So talking about special economic zones and the work we're doing on industrialization more generally, let me just mention 3 things we're doing that would have long-term significance and impact. One is that we have an industrial council. It's actually called the Nigeria Industrial Policy and Competitiveness Advisory Council. The role of that council, which is a partnership between the public sector and the private sector, is to deal with the critical infrastructure needs, or the critical things you need to get right to achieve rapid industrialization. And I believe that council will continue to sit under President Buhari and well beyond. So the second thing we've done is to launch something called Project Made in Nigeria for Export, which is seeking to establish special economic zones and industrial parks across the entire country. The whole idea is to provide industrial infrastructure, and it's a partnership with other financiers, the African Exim Bank, Afro-Exim Bank, the Bank of Industry, the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority, the African Development Bank, and so on and so forth. The whole idea is to attract funding for industrialization in Nigeria. Finally, we're also working on what we call sector policies, which is basically dealing with those sectors where Nigeria ought to be a market leader and exporter, like tomato, like oil palm, like what we did in cement, and what we want to do in places like cassava and so on. In all those areas, work is ongoing, but it's a marathon, it's not a 100-meter dash. And I believe that that's what will take us to robust industrialization.
From this event, it is expected that the federal government will broaden its partnership with the Nigerian capital market to deepen the economy.